Welcome back to Detailed, an original podcast by RCAT. This is the show where we uncover lessons learned to help you navigate your next project. I'm Cherise Lakeside, Senior Spec Writer at RDH Building Science, and your host. My guest today is Michelle Vo, Vice President and Principal at Hennebery Eddy Architects here in Portland, Oregon. Ambitious, persistent, and creative, Michelle pushes for innovative, user-focused design solutions in her award-winning projects for public, private, and institutional clients. As a vice president of Hennebery Eddy, Michelle helps lead the firm's Portland studio and their aviation services. With experience ranging from analysis looking at entire airport impacts to the granular details in all areas of airports, including public, operational, and infrastructure. The project we are talking about today, the Portland International Airport Concourse E extension, marks the Port of Portland's first major terminal project in nearly 2 decades and represents a major step forward in balancing the flow of passengers across the airport. Rooted in a sense of place, the design is inspired by Oregon's natural landscapes and urban character, with expansive curtain wall glazing that floods the interiors with daylight and opens sweeping views towards our mountain, Mount Hood, the Columbia River, and the surrounding airfield. Now, let's get into the details. Welcome back to Detailed. My guest today, I am honored to have her here, is Michelle Vo, Vice President and Principal at Hennebery Eddy Architects here in my beautiful hometown of Portland, Oregon. The project we get to talk about today is the Portland International Airport. By the way, listeners, best airport on the planet. So if you think any airport's better, you're wrong. The Concourse E extension, obviously also here in Portland. Michelle, welcome to Detailed. How are you?
Thank you, Cherise. Doing well. Thank you.
I'm excited to have you today. I'm especially happy when I get to have hometown guests on the show.
Absolutely.
Because
well, I'm excited to meet you. We have a lot of common friends, and so it'd be nice to spend some time with you.
We have. So funny story, Alexander in your office.
Yeah.
I'm gonna rat him out a little bit. Alexandra and I are on the same chili cook-off team for the Portland chapter of CSI. And we are long-standing champions because of our crazy themes we do every year. So we have a lot of fun. But just next time you see Alexander, just ask him, just to say, hey, Alexander, tell me about the rapping leprechaun.
The rapping?
Rapping?
Like rap, leprechaun. Like music, leprechaun.
Like, yeah, rap.
Okay.
And then picture Alexander rapping in Lederhosen.
Oh, please tell me that's true.
Oh, it is so true. I should see if anybody has video of it. If they do, I will send it to you. Because
oh wow, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I could tell you stories. I won't say anything more because he's probably going to strangle me for that.
Yeah,
we're good friends, and we are. There's a reason we're the champions.
Nice. Well, Alexander's been with Hennebery Eddy for quite some time, long enough that he has earned a sabbatical. So he'll be heading on sabbatical this fall.
Oh, that dog!
I know. Maybe he can perfect his chili and leprechaun rap routine.
This last year was the first year our chili actually won.
Okay.
Our chili never wins, but the theme contest, we just blow everybody out of the water. And it's a different theme every year, and it's not an overall theme for the chili cook-off. Every team just does their own secret thing. The year that he was the rapping leprechaun, I was the Twisted Tooth Fairy. So it was like a holiday mashup. Each of the 4 members of our team we had a bad Santa, this gigantic cigar smoking rabbit. We're the team to chase, but we have the best time.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
You can go tease them about it now.
Good camaraderie. That's a great story.
Absolutely. We have a lot of fun at Portland CSI. People miss out if they don't come hang out with us.
CSI is a big deal in Portland. It's a big deal.
Yeah, that's because we're pretty cool.
Yeah.
You hear
Some
that other CSI chapters. We're a big
we got
deal.
we got some spec champions in Portland. So
Yeah, well, we're pretty passionate about what we do, but I think we live in a city that really promotes that as well.
yes. Yeah.
I think that's inherent in AEC in Portland. There's just a
Yeah.
lot of really passionate people, and you
For
put them
sure.
all in one space, and something good's going to happen. Either something good or something really fun, one or the other.
Yeah. Well, Portland, there are a lot of great firms and great architects in Portland, and the specs are really a huge part of making the projects come out the way they do. You know.
Well, thank you. I'm glad at least somebody realizes that. Sometimes you got to do some
Underappreciated
convincing.
sometimes, but yeah, it's super important, and you gotta pay attention from the start and really nail it down if you want to get what you intended at the end of the day.
And less headaches during construction.
That too,
Yeah, that's a big one.
really.
So we like to always start every episode with an icebreaker question just to get to know you a little bit and get warmed up a little. And so for you today, I would like to know, you're vice president at your firm.
Mhm.
What character traits do you most admire in other professionals?
Oh wow. I think what I would say, and when I see it in others, I'm like, yeah, they figured that out, is really transparent and direct communication that's delivered with empathy. And
Yes, we're going to be best friends already.
God, when you see that, it's like, I don't care the topic you're talking about. If you can really nail that, you can really you can get some hard things communicated. And also, if you have that in your mind, you're also going to show appreciation in authentic ways. And really, what school you went to, what your experience is, none of that really matters if you haven't figured out how to communicate and do so in authentic, transparent, direct ways, but deliver that with an understanding of the person you're talking to, the situation, the context, and show empathy.
And it's funny that you say that because I do a lot of public speaking and teaching, and I'm constantly telling people that it doesn't matter how smart you are. If you can't deal with people,
Yeah.
you're dead in the water. And emotional intelligence is so much more important than most companies of any industry give credit to it. I would choose, if I had two equal candidates in front of me, I would choose that person with that higher level of emotional intelligence, which takes about 30 seconds to nail down. Even if the other person was smarter or
For
maybe
sure.
had more experience.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. A lot of people are smart.
Yeah.
Got a lot of smart people.
Not
And
all of them are easy to work with, though.
not all are easy to work with. Yeah. Navigating your intelligence with humility. Yeah.
Well,
Nobody
and
wants to hear someone
especially,
just talk about how intelligent they are. Like, I
yeah,
know this and I know that. I don't care.
yuck. Well, in our business is, and we forget this sometimes, but that this building doesn't happen without every single player on that team. And not every career is as team based as this business is.
Yeah.
There are other careers you could have where you can work in basically solitary and confinement if you want to. You can't do that in this business. You have to be able to communicate and you have to be able to collaborate,
Yeah.
or it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just not. And so I think it should be like part of every education program. I mean, you're born with this. Most people are born with at least a good amount of whatever emotional intelligence they have or
Yeah.
learned at very young ages. But you can't even improve it if you're not particularly good in that arena, if you just understand it.
Well, I
But
think
we didn't come to talk about
we
that.
didn't come to talk about that. I could talk about that. I mean, that's a whole nother hour.
I know. I'm going, and I know I'll go right down that rabbit hole. Let's talk about this project. So I
Okay.
was lucky. I had the unique opportunity to interview Steve Clem at Skanska
All right.
in the earlier construction phase of this whole massive Portland airport renovation that's been going on. And my biggest takeaway from that interview was, dear Lord, this is a complicated project. I mean, just crazy insane. I don't know that outside of the OHSU's Life Sciences center down at the waterfront, which I had the opportunity to work on for a while and write some of the specs for. I don't think I've ever seen a more complicated project. So tell me, the Concourse E extension is just one part of all the different things going on in the Portland airport.
Yeah.
Give me a broad description of what the Concourse E extension scope of work is and what you were, I know what you had to start with, but what you had to start with and what you were looking to achieve.
Sure. Well, if you really want to zoom out, the problem that was being solved by this extension was that at Portland Airport, the north and south sides are like wholly different operating parts of the airport behind the scenes. And prior to the Concourse E extension, a huge, much more massive load of people was going to the south side of the airport. You had Alaska Airlines with just less than half of the passengers at Portland, plus Southwest, which was growing, and other carriers as well. And so most of the people, most of the bags, all of that was going to the south side, and the north side was underutilized. And the north side had fewer gates. So this project sought to rebalance that load between the north and south sides of the airport. So to do that, we had to build more gates and move Southwest Airlines to the north side. So that's the why of the project, the background why. The project itself is a concourse extension. So Concourse E had 5 gates and a couple of ground load gates downstairs that not a lot of people knew existed, literally downstairs at the airport. And this added 7 new passenger boarding bridge gates and 2 ground load gates, essentially kind of moving that ground loading function off to the end of the concourse. Again, downstairs, you walk out to the smaller aircraft there. So that's 830-foot long extension added on to the 5 gates that already existed at Concourse E. And that, in a nutshell, is what the extension is about. Of course, to make that happen, we had to also, when you're moving an airline, we had to go back and touch baggage systems and ticketing and all sorts of other things so that Southwest could be on the north side of the airport. As I mentioned, the two sides weren't cross-connecting at that time.
So because I'm an Oregonian and I've worked in this industry for a long time, I've worked for a lot of clients, and I've done a lot of both public and private work, a lot of public work. And so in working for an international airport, I can only imagine that the planning and programming would make up a much larger team of stakeholders. You got a lot of players involved in something like an international airport. Tell me what the planning process looked like for this project.
Well, there were parts of planning that began before we were engaged as a design team, of course, and that there are aviation planning firms that work with airports to do the really zoomed out planning where they're drawing, I like to call it colored rectangles of what should go where.
Yeah.
Much more complicated than that, of course. But they know, that's what they do. The airport works hard to figure out what the project should be. They've got to really do that planning for, the capital improvements budgeting, where's the money going to come from, how will this be financed? So there's years of work that goes into the project before they even hire the design team. And that's what they did at Portland too. They have their whole, their planning folks internally at the Port of Portland and firms that they engage externally as well. So.
Well, I've been hearing about this project for years. Yeah. I mean, now we're seeing all the fruits of it. I will never forget the first day that I walked into our airport after the big, I'm not sure what they call that area now, but with all the
central
wood
terminal.
Oh my God, it's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm like, I would come hang out here. Which you do when you're waiting to catch a flight. So one of the things I have always found challenging on projects is when you're taking older construction and then adding newer construction to it. That can be difficult. You have different products you're using these days, and in an airport, there's a lot of extra things to consider. Tell me a little bit about what you had to work with in the terminal that was there, and what unique elements you had to tackle. Because I mean, would you just chop off the end and add more terminal? I'm pretty sure it wasn't that easy. Don't we wish?
Yeah. We wish. Yeah. Well, there's the part that the passengers would experience in the older, the original part of Concourse E. It has a sloped vaulted space with a space frame system, trusses at 30 feet on center. And that roof was sloped so that I'll call it south, the whole airport's at a slight angle, but let's call it the south side was the high point. And then the space frame trusses sloped down, and then the hold rooms where you would sit in the chairs and wait for your flight had low flat ceilings with a metal slat ceiling, right? And then windows on the north side. And when we began the project, I think, generally speaking, the Port of Portland was thinking, well, just build us more, just, extrude that sausage to be longer. And of course, that's, you learn so much more over years about what's working and not working. And we've learned a lot about sustainability and benefits of daylight and so on, or of course time from when the original E was built and when this extension was done. But it really didn't make sense to just extend the same sausage. Something different needed to happen. So, we had to take that very strong form of existing and figure out how to extend it in a way that made sense with all of the new considerations. And what we ended up doing was making what we called the portal, kind of like a little gateway between the two. Because when you get into the new Concourse E, the roof is sloped the opposite direction. And how do you resolve that between the two? So we had a little portal, flat roof area, kind of very simple connector, a little gasket, if you will. I think it was maybe 8 or 10 feet long, that connects the two buildings. And when you come through that portal, it's really a different experience. Still a very volumetric space, but the daylight is so different, and the way that the ceilings are in the hold rooms where you wait, it's not a metal slatted ceiling, so it's not reflecting light in that same kind of way that it feels brighter. And we were able to really do some amazing things with steel so that we didn't have columns every 30 feet in the middle. Some very different, just spatial feeling going between the two. I think getting from that assumption of extrude and give us more of the same thing to, yes, we should do something different, was a constraint that it really was a change in the way the thinking was going from the beginning to what was actually constructed.
One of the things that totally blew my mind that I have never seen before in a project. When I talked to Steve about the work they were doing out there, is one of my questions, was what did the permitting process look like, and what, again, this is an airport. There's all kinds of security concerns. There's all kinds of things that you have to think about. And he told me that they had to get a building permit every single day while they were putting that wood roof in. And that I just still can't wrap my brain around that. For you on this project, how did that process go with the city? Because I know it's not just as simple as building this extension on. There's all these pieces and parts that an operating airport has to be concerned about that you never encounter on any other kind of project.
Yeah.
How did that go with the city?
Well, when you're working at an airport, and kudos to Port of Portland and City of Portland for figuring this out years ago. An airport, Portland Airport has its own zip code. It's like a city in itself, right? And the number of people moving through it is like a city. Number of people working there, it's like a small city. And so what they've done is have people at City of Portland who are dedicated to know and understand the airport. There's a fire life safety master plan that's filed with the City of Portland, and anytime there's a new project that happens that impacts fire life safety, that plan is updated. So there's a lot of pre-work and understanding and knowledge of the facility that exists at City of Portland with dedicated staff. And the Port of Portland has a mentality of we collaborate with the City of Portland. We will be going in early, and you schedule early meetings. You bring the project in when you're really early in design, and you talk about here's what this project's about, here's what the scope is, here's our fire life safety approach, and bring them along all the way through and come to them with specific questions far before submitting for permit. Like, here's how we're seeing this. Is this how you're seeing that? Like, let's get on the same page. And that way, when they receive the set of drawings, the thousands of sheets, they're not trying to figure out what the heck this thing is, and it's not coming to them out of the blue. They've got an understanding, and you've built a relationship there and explained your thinking along the way. And that whole mentality set up even before the project began, just the mentality of the agencies working together is really what keeps projects moving forward through the city for the Port of Portland.
I would imagine that was a game changer in getting through that process. So, you could get going in construction, having that early collaboration, those dedicated staff. Because you can have early collaboration. I hear of architects doing that. Reaching out early if they're doing something crazy so that they can, get some buy-in. But getting dedicated staff is a whole next level.
Yeah. It's going to be the same person that was working on airport project reviews before your project and all during your project. So there's that commitment. It makes it a lot easier. And
genius move. That doesn't surprise me with the Port of Portland though either.
Yeah, right.
So
if there's any agency in Portland that's going to have that nailed, it's probably them.
Well, I have I haven't in my current firm, but I have worked on Port of Portland projects myself in the past. And have known people, including spec writers, that worked there at the Port of Portland. And so I'm very familiar with the care and feeding that they put into their projects. Yeah. And it does make a difference.
Yeah.
So we've talked just very broadly. We extended the concourse. Let's talk about your design scope in a little bit more detail. We know we have an extension, but what exactly were you designing in this extension?
Well, we're adding a concourse to a very popular, well-loved airport. Portlanders, gosh, we love our airport, right?
Yeah, we're obnoxious.
Gosh. You're like in the spotlight if you're working at the airport. I can tell you solidly that because I also did the carpet replacement, which is probably the hottest spotlight I've ever been in an airport work.
Well, we'll be talking about that too.
Yeah. So, what we did was we need to make a place that's authentic to Oregon. Portland is the big airport of Oregon. It's where folks are coming through, and it needs to feel like, yes, like Portland, but also like a lot of the other experiences that you have in Oregon. And as a design team, one of my favorite parts of the design work before we even really put any pencil to paper, if you will, was to go in the Columbia Gorge and hike through the Oneonta Falls Canyon. Back when you could do that before the fire, and now it's closed. And that experience, not like both the hike through the canyon and that experience of traveling together as a team and looking at all of the things we were traveling past and through and experiencing to be there, that had a big influence on the project design. And that was really important to us as a design team, was to be beyond the postcard version of Portland, right? Like, get out there and get in it and literally walk through Oneonta Creek and experience being in Oregon, truly in Oregon. That I can talk about how that played out into the project design, but I think that was one of our big design goals, was to reflect something beyond just a postcard version of Portland or Oregon or so on. We also realized pretty quickly that Concourse E is really the only place in the airport that you can see Mount Hood. And yes, that is a postcard version of Oregon, but it's also very important to Oregonians. It's, we call it the mountain. The mountain is out. You can see the mountain today, right?
I'm laughing that you just said that, because I've been, not so much these days with a lot of things going on, but I've for years been pretty active on Twitter, in all kinds of industry things and everything. And I can't count how many times I tweeted out a picture from wherever I was at of Mount Hood with the mountains out today. It's just a thing here.
Yeah. Which mountain? Oh, we all know what mountain that is.
Right.
I mean, very, yeah. Yeah. So that in the existing Concourse E, there was a small, I want to say the format was kind of squarish window at the end of the Concourse. And if you walked all the way down there, you could see Mount Hood. But you didn't know that unless you actually walked all the way to that window. There was really nothing exploiting the fact that you could do that, taking advantage of it. No seating or, concession or anything. So that was also a big goal of ours, was to take advantage of that opportunity.
And I'm going to say you did a damn fine job of it. Because I have been in Concourse C, and I remember the first time I got off a flight in the new Concourse, and it happened to be right at sunset. And you know how it is. You come back from a trip, you just want to get home. I did not go home right away. I stopped, and I just stood there looking at that incredible sight in front of me. And I'm like, and at that time I didn't even know that your firm did the Concourse, but I'm just, working in this industry, you look at buildings in a different way. And I'm just like, whoever did this needs like the gold medal of whatever. Oh, I guess architects do have gold medals, but I was blown away. It's like the perfect picture frame. And you don't have to walk all the way to the end to see it. You could be
No,
quite a
yeah.
ways down that concourse and see it up ahead of you. And it's stunning. Just absolutely, like, overwhelmingly stunning.
That is a really just clincher moment for me. And I think our interiors group did a great job with the furniture selection there as well. That it's like getting a chair that kind of hugs you and and relax and look at Mount Hood. I think that we did somewhat of a heroic cantilevered roof there at the end, really try to accentuate just pulling you out, pulling your feeling out past the curtain wall and out towards the mountain. But I think the clincher was the Port of Portland understanding how important that moment was, because the initial layouts for the concourse showed that there would be hold room seating waiting for your gate there at the end of the concourse. And through us showing them some opportunities, if you did this, then that could be more of a public space. They saw the vision, and we actually made the building a little longer so that seating could be moved to the north side, and that view of the mountain would be something that you could just walk right up to the curtain wall, enjoy those seats, and that clincher decision right there.
And it's not typically something you see in airports at the end of a concourse. You see, you always have windows you can look and watch the plane coming up to your gate. Those aren't always real notable either, but to have this just, I don't know how you ask for a better shot out the window. And, just this big area down there. I remember I've been in that concourse now a couple of different times, and I will leave my gate to go hang out down there until it's time to go catch my flight. It was just, as protective as we are about our airport and it representing who we are as Oregonians, I don't think a better choice could have been made by all of you, like really seriously. I mean, I've been in the concourse, and I hate to say this, please don't hate me, but I can't really remember a whole lot else about the concourse, because that was such a bold statement as soon as you got in there. And I'm sure there's a lot of other really wonderful things, because our airport's great everywhere right now. Everything that's been redone is beautiful, but I can't get over that piece.
A lot of airports at the end of the concourse, you're trying to fit in one more gate. Right. And it becomes hold room and people queuing up to board and so on. And then off the end of the building is a passenger boarding bridge that is probably solid and at an angle and blocks your view. And that's how most concourses terminate. And so this move, that vision to do that was, made just such a huge difference in the concourse experience there.
Well, my level of respect for Port of Portland just went up even higher. Because, in our world these days, it's always so much about every last penny. And every last bit of rentable space or whatever, regardless of building type. And, but people spend a lot of time in these public spaces. And when an owner, regardless of who it is, really takes that extra bit of care and feeding to make it a place you want to be while you have to be there, I really respect that in a time where, I don't think we get to do as much of that always as we'd like. And it's
they did it really smartly, because we have, airports. I mean, you're never done adding another layer to that onion. It just keeps going and going. And at Concourse E at the end there, little known fact, there is a moving walkway pit beneath the floor of that Juliet bar that's at the end of the concourse. There's a moving walkway pit ready for when that concourse extends, who knows when, off into the future. There's a pit ready to put the beginning of a moving walkway in. to take you down further down the concourse. And that's kind of thinking ahead, long-term thinking that has to be done when you're working at airports. You got to think that way.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, because it's like a 12-mile hike to get to the gates these days. It's like, oh, going to the airport, I'm going to get my steps today.
Yeah.
I mean, they warn you, get here in time to walk to your gate.
Yeah.
Which is fine for me, but it's like, I have my heavy laptop bag. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, they need little like strollers for my bags.
Yeah, for all of us. I mean, you consider a lot aging population and how to accommodate those who struggle to walk long distances like that. And there are, moving walkways could also be dangerous for some. So how can you make them feel comfortable making that walk without them feeling like I need to get on that moving walkway or else I'm never going to be able to make it to the end? And that, you might not remember much else about the concourse, but there are 2 concession nodes in the concourse that give relief to the long 830-foot walkway. That's just in the new building, right? You got more if you count the existing E in your walk to get from your car to ticketing through TSA and so on. But those 2 nodes are the place where the roof lifts up. There's more volume. We have the concession. In the first node is really where most of the concessions are. In the second node, there's more of a kiosk concession and a children's play area. But providing those breaks along that walk were really critical to giving that concourse a sense of scale and a sense of relief in the long walk. And that was studied hard as well. That the distance between those nodes was based on the Portland downtown grid, which is downtown Portland. It's 200-foot blocks. That's small blocks, really, for compared to a lot of cities. And that has been so beneficial to downtown Portland for just the whole pedestrian environment of downtown Portland, where the more often you have breaks in buildings, the more corners you create that are opportunities for successful retail, restaurant, what have you, the more successful your city is going to be. And so we took that 200-foot grid of Portland and we used that to determine where should these nodes lie within this concourse.
Oh, that's a good. I never would have thought about it that way.
Right. Yeah,
I also love the way. I also love the way the airport. And again, forgive me because I can't remember if this was the case in Concourse E, but through these long concourses have scattered rocking chairs or big easy chairs or little machines that make bird noises. These places where you can just, if you have a longer layover or whatever, you can just hang out and not be sitting in that holding area, which often feels like a cell in some airports.
Yeah.
Those are not typically very comfortable
Yeah.
Spaces. And I love the way the airport all over the place has really created comfortable and beautiful places to be. Just like the waiting area when you're waiting for people to come off of flights, the big wood steps. It's just it's a completely different experience in our airport now.
Yeah.
Doesn't make me excited about a long flight, but yeah, exactly. Yeah. So staying on the theme of that incredible view for a minute, let's talk a little bit about daylight. Tell me how daylight helps the quality of a space, and how do you manage the daylight and the views and the solar heat gain to get those views, but also, keep it a comfortable space and not blind you. I've been in airports. Literally, the sun's at a certain place and you are getting your retinas burned.
Glare.
So talk to me about that.
Yeah. Well, we did studies during design, and the daylight studies, the heat gain studies, we did glare studies, luminance. What are we getting? What's the impact of the sun, and how can we take advantage of that as an opportunity, but mitigate the things that come along with it, one important thing was to get light to come from all of the sides, if you will. So we have the north side light, which is really much easier to manage than the south side light. That south side curtain wall, I don't know if the listeners will be familiar with it, but it's canted, it slopes back. And that curtain wall was going to be receiving a lot of light. So there we used, different colors, tinted glass. We had frit, the usual coatings, and exterior fins to block light, as well as automated roller shades where we needed to mitigate glare at specific times of day. So that's how things were managed on the south side. And that frit, it really doesn't block your view. You might not even realize that it's fritted until you get right up to it. And then it's like, oh, there are dots on this glass. But that's helping with all the solar considerations. And then we have the clear stories, that was so important to balancing light through that concourse. And so we're bringing in light, north-facing clear stories, sloped ceiling, bouncing that light around the building. We also have some a little bit of clear story on the south side where there's kind of a mechanical well zone. And with that, we put some wood slatted screen in front of it to help filter that light. But bringing light in was really important from a daylighting perspective, but also from an experiential perspective, as I was talking about walking through the canyon in the gorge. That's an experience where the canyon it's coming in over you, if you will. The walls, the rock walls, you're like, if a rock drops right now, it's hitting me in the head. So I'm right under this wall. But it also squeezes your view of the sky down to a narrow slot at the top of the canyon. And that experience, having those clear stories and focusing the eye up through these sloping planes to that clear story, was part of bringing that experience into the concourse, in a not overly literal way, but it's an experience to be like, oh, the sky, I'm looking at the sky up there. And then the south side curtain wall, that with the frit and the fins that I mentioned and the different colors of glazing there, that was inspired by the way that light is filtered when you're in a forest. And it's just coming through the tree branches in different ways. And there are areas of the trees that are dense and less dense. And that was the inspiration that brought us to that as a design solution for the south side. So it's just little things that are meant to give a feeling, right? You wouldn't look at them and go, oh, I see what they did here.
No, and as you're describing that, I was thinking about that one time I got off the plane and the sun was just starting to come down behind our mountain. Now everybody can guess which mountain we're talking about because I'm not going to tell you if you're not from here. If you know, you know. If you don't, oh well. No, I'm kidding. But one of the things that stood out for me was how light it was. But it was this, because it was just one of those beautiful view days. And the sun was bright coming down behind. It was just one of those perfect, like, photographic moments. And I'm not a person, I'm a spec writer. I'm not an architect. I don't pay attention to some of the details you architect people do. But what I do remember feeling is, and foggy is not the right word, this muted, it was light everywhere, but it was this muted light. It was this comfortable, warm, embracing light that I felt really changed the experience of being there and witnessing that. It was not this stark, light can be almost painful sometimes in some cases.
Sure.
But you're right. It's hard to put words on it, but it's a feeling you have standing there.
Yeah.
And you achieve that. You really did. And I'm not that good about noticing those kinds of things. So for me to notice this and to feel it, is saying something.
Yeah. Well, Mount Hood, it's interesting that you said sun setting behind Mount Hood, because really the sun setting opposite, but Mount Hood, it is just, it captures alpenglow like no other mountain. It's so singular standing above the rest of the Cascades there, that I think a lot of us think of it as the sun setting there, because that is
Yeah.
the thing to look at when the sun is setting, is the mountain. It's turning pink, the sky's reflecting colors all over. It's it's a captivating mountain. Um, I had a photo that I took. I went to the Larch Mountain Viewpoint one morning very early before work. It had just opened for the season, so probably end of May. And I took a photo of Mount Hood, and I realized later, looking at the photo, that the sun was rising and the top of the mountain was casting a shadow on itself. What, what is that? Oh, it's the shadow of the mountain. We just don't think of it that way. We're so used to the mountain itself glowing and
Yeah.
not being the shadow.
Yeah. I don't
Such an
think I
important
ever
piece.
even, when Mount Hood is doing its thing, which is pretty regularly if it's not a cloudy, rainy day, I don't think I ever even pay attention to where the sun is. It's just that mountain lights up and you just know it's sunset or sunrise.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, you definitely achieved that that feel that you just talked about. I was really surprised when you said that, because that's exactly what I was thinking in my
Well, that's warming
experience
to
there.
hear. That feels good.
Well, I don't think architects get to hear enough how people experience their work
Yeah,
or what things
true,
stood
true.
out. Everybody has a different experience when they go into any space. They'll have a little bit different opinion or a little bit different, description of how it made them feel. But
Yeah, or
I
they've.
think that's helpful for architects to know those things.
I think so. Well, especially the way you're talking about it as a feeling, because I think sometimes we'll hear, "Oh, that space was so cool. Um, I liked the whatever material or whatever that you used. I like that thing that you did." Right. And so I think a lot of people, talk about whether or not they like the space and maybe some specific thing as an object or a material that's in the space. But it's less often that we hear how the space made someone feel, which is what, as architects, that's what we're trying to do when we pick that material and we decided to make it this form and so on.
Yeah, what you got
So,
to do is talk to non-architect people.
yeah.
I mean, I joke all the time that, like, when I go to conferences, it I'm never super excited about going to lunch with an architect, because if the restaurant is any more than like a block away from wherever it is we are, I know we're going to stop every 10 feet to pick apart some detail on a building or some material, or why is it doing this? And it takes like 6 weeks to get to lunch, because,
True.
they can't. I think sometimes architects forget how to step back and not look at all those things that you design and draw and make come together. And I think they sometimes forget to take a moment to step back and just forget about that stuff and just
Yeah.
feel the space.
Yeah. Just be
Um,
present.
yeah, just it. Some architects, I don't know if they're capable of not of blocking out all those technical details.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, you're probably going to see them. It's what do you choose to express and how do you choose to take in what you're seeing, what you're noticing? How do you choose to process that and
yeah.
express it or not express it? Just let yourself be.
Well, that's why they need big marshmallow people like me. I'll tell you all about how it made me feel. Let's talk about the exterior a little bit, particularly now that I work for a building enclosure consultant. I'm far more interested in the exterior and the wall assemblies and how tight a building is than I ever was before. Learning a whole lot more about that these days as well. Tell me about some of the material choices you made on the exterior. And I'm a little curious, from like an energy efficiency standpoint. Obviously, you've got old building, you've got new building.
Yeah.
So did you do anything? What did you do with the new piece? And did you have to do anything to the old piece to kind of get it all in line? Tell me about the enclosure design.
Yeah, the enclosure. Um, well, I mean, we were going for LEED Gold. So, first of all, you're thinking beyond just baseline code. And so not only have codes advanced, but also we're really trying to, in that project, push for more, challenge ourselves. How can we get this to be an even more high performing building? Um, so I mean that was part of it. And meanwhile, you're trying to do that while um, expressing an exterior that addresses, first of all, the fact that the building is 830 feet long, and that's long. It's from the exterior, it's pinned between really the runway and airplane circulation on one side and the multi-use bike and pedestrian path and the car approach to the curbside on the other side. So you're pinned between these two things that move it at very different speeds, aircraft on one side, cars and bikes and pedestrians on the other, and then squeezed in between on the interior are your passengers that are moving at a whole different level, experiencing things a whole different way. So on the exterior of the facade, we were working to make a building that is a gateway to the airport, addresses its length by breaking it up into pieces, but not be so unique at each step that it would become a distraction for the drivers. So that was also important. Make it deal with the length, deal with the speed that you're passing it. Don't distract the drivers. They need to be looking at the signage and the bumper in front of them. So, here we are designing a high performance shell to this building that's also trying to address those challenges. And so what you have is a system where we're expressing the 30-foot grid of structural steel by really pushing out the facade every 30 feet with a boxed out rib, if you will, of the building. And then between those, bumping the glazing out from the surface. So if you walk up close to the curtain wall along the concourse on the south side, you'll notice that it is pushed beyond the facade by about a foot. It's like it's pushing out towards that roadway. And that's a lot of detailing to deal with and to track around and to make sure that you're not, taking cold air from the outside and just bringing it right inside with all of the moves that you're making. And it really some excellent folks on the team that could zoom into that, understand the why of detailing, and also understand that the solutions need to they need to functionally work, and they also need to fit with the design intent and be executable in a very compressed, constrained site. Sure. I'm sure Steve Clem talked to you about the site and constraints there. I mean, working between the roadway, they had 8 or 10 feet or something between the roadway guardrail and the building to work. And
Well,
on
I
the other
remember
side,
Steve saying that a lot of that was being fabricated offsite. I mean, I saw the video of them bringing those big sections of the wood roof in on the robots, but there's just not space. I didn't think about that where your concourse is being sandwiched like that. Oh, good. When we get to the construction question, you can tell me how all that went down. Well, and then an active open airport.
yeah,
I mean, I'm sure the concourse was closed, or was it? Was the part that they already had open?
they, well, existing E, the ground loading gates below had to close, but the rest of E remained open during construction.
Oh,
So, I
that's
mean,
fun.
we're adding on to the
Right.
existing, but we had to close taxiways, we had periods where the multi-use path that exists between the building and the roadway had to be closed. But all in all, really, you're working so hard to minimize impact on operations and passengers. Both are passengers impact operations, operations impact passengers. So yeah, there was a lot of consideration there, and I suppose I didn't didn't mention when you asked about exterior, the lower part below the concourse. Tend to focus on that, like what all the people are seeing and experiencing. The people that are working at the operational level below the passengers are, we've got break rooms, office spaces for managers. We've got all sorts of storage rooms and support spaces that make the whole airport and the concourse work. And where those interface with the exterior, you're facing, baggage tugs and pushback tugs, like all sorts of equipment that has a lot of weight, and when it hits something, it does a lot of damage. So, at the lower levels of the concourse, you're like, okay, we need to make this bulletproof down here, and things get protected with major bollards, concrete filled bollards. You're trying to make robust moves down there. So you're kind of dealing with two very different beasts that are connected and relying on each other.
I didn't even think about I've been to that lower gate that most people don't know is there, because I remember the first time I'm like, where is my gate? I was all frustrated. I couldn't find, it skipped a number. And then I realized, oh, what the heck is that? And that wasn't all that long ago, actually. I had no idea. But I didn't even think about the services, below the concourse and all the things going, all the safety people and all the luggage people and airplane mechanics and all of that going on. Okay, I'm going to go on a rabbit hole for a minute.
Love it.
I'm just curious, everybody does a particular project type for the first time once, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you even know where to start the first time you work on an airport project? There's a lot. I'm just sitting here thinking, okay, we're going to do an airport project. Just as a spec writer, what do I think I need to know? And then you mentioned the lower level, and I'm like, oh gosh, I didn't even think about that. How do you get that? I'm assuming there's transportation consultants or aviation consultants that provide some guidance, but that's got to be a ginormous learning curve.
Yeah, well, I think so many things there. Yes. We have an aviation design group in the firm, right? So there's a group of people who are in love with doing aviation design and are into it and are going to geek out on all the things aviation. And if you ask someone in the aviation design group, like for a bollard detail, you're going to get a heck of a bollard. And it may not be what you really needed just for, protecting a trash enclosure behind a restaurant or something. I don't know. I think to really be comfortable designing in that project type, you have to be comfortable with taking on what might feel overwhelming. And I think if you're not comfortable with that, it may feel like chaos, right? It's just so much coming at you every which way. You're dealing with design inspiration and passengers and all that, and on the other end, you're like, I got to keep this baggage tug from knocking over this thing, and how's it gonna flow, and how's it not gonna hit our building column or take out the overhead door, and be ready to figure out how it's all going to come together in ways that could be phased and are able to be constructed with virtually 24/7 operations. I mean, the airport's awake 24/7. There's a period roughly from 11:30 midnight until about 4 a.m. where there's not that much happening. It's kind of the downtime, if you will, to get things done in a less impactful way on operations. And that's a very small window, especially when you're thinking about shifts and people that got to come and go from doing the thing that you need to get done. You got to be comfortable working in that kind of thinking, in that kind of space, and being comfortable sometimes feeling like there's so much going on and you got to just be glancing all around for the next thing. What's next? What do I have to keep track of? And you also have to feel, I think, really comfortable delegating, because no one person could possibly do what needs to be done. And you got to get comfortable with that and mentor and coach and build confidence and knowledge so that when you delegate, you know it's going to be handled. Don't be afraid to hold people accountable so that they do learn all that people skills that we were talking about earlier, right? Yeah.
And you're preaching to the choir as far as mentorship, but I would imagine it's like, I mean, besides all the technical stuff down below that has to happen that nobody's probably ever worked on that project type before. A lot of people haven't. But even in the concourse, it's not just a walkway and some seats and some doors go into airplanes. You've got, the gates and the bridges that have to come up there to get you under your plane, and you've got retail spaces and restaurant spaces. And it would seem to me that you really, really need to be open-minded to work on a project with this many layers. You have to be able to look at any one given thing you're doing with 5 different perspectives before you make a decision, because everything's playing into everything else.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and let's not forget the bags, right? Oh my God, the bags. Always the bags. Anything in rolling bag height zone, just, yeah. Yeah, I think too that you'll be working with a client that has a lot of expertise on staff. And so, as architects or members of the design team, we're all bringing our zone of expertise tied to whatever area of responsibility we have, bringing that forward. And in the room for any given set of options or things that need to be decided are going to be the folks from the airport side saying, hey, love that you want to put your concession kitchen there, but we've got this electrical room below that, so it's not happening. Everything has like a ripple effect and a further impact when you're working in this project type, and being open to hearing that and solving things together, not just with the design team, but with the stakeholders on the airport side. I mean, you've got to be a collaborator. Open-minded collaboration.
Is it fair to say that on a project like this, you would expect to have your client, your owners, far more involved than you might on a different project type? I mean, the owners and stakeholders are always involved to a certain degree, but then there's other projects where you practically need to put them in your office. And I would imagine this would require a much higher level of involvement.
Yeah, for sure. A huge level of involvement. I mean, putting them in your office. Yes, we had desks available for Port of Portland staff in our field office out on Airport Way. I think one of the most memorable and rewarding series of things in the project was, we call them the workshops. And over the course of this project, think it was 28 or 29 workshops that we had. Wow. And these were typically day and a half workshops. And so all day, I don't know, start at 8 or 9 a.m. and finishing at 3 or 4, we had the stakeholders from the Port of Portland in the room with the design team, and not just the architects. Like, we got the mechanical engineer, we got plumbing, we got civil, we got structural. We're like, everybody's there. And Port of Portland had a huge number of people in the room. I mean, probably 30. You put out an agenda ahead of time so people know, all right, we're talking about this at this point and that at that point. And the benefit was, when you went to talk about any one thing, give the example for plumbing and electrical, right? You've got your maybe consultant in the room saying, here are some options, what we might do here. Right there in the room, you've got the Port of Portland's electrical folks and plumbing and like mechanical. They're all there, and they will give feedback. And when they disagree with each other, they can solve it right there in the room and talk about it. Or if it's something they need to go away and take away, they're there in the room looking at each other going, oh yeah, we need to talk about this more. And they'll go figure that out. And I mean, it was a huge commitment of time and resources to do that. The benefit was just exponentially worth it. I mean, just couldn't beat it. I think that's the way you have to work on a project like this, is in that collaborative mode with all the people there, so that all your ripple effects can be known before you're
My
making a
opinion is
decision.
that's the way you have to work on every project. Because, I mean, everybody's, our budget can't take this. Your budget cannot take what's going to happen during construction.
Yeah.
If you don't do this now, and your budget can't take the extra time of, okay, you didn't have this person at the meeting, so now I have to go back and make some phone calls, do some emails, have the conversation anyway. But now I've got to find a time I can get them on the phone. Whereas if everybody's in the room, I'm an efficiency freak. I mean, I really am. And so, it's one of the things when I'm teaching that I preach is that we all know how tight the schedules are and how tight the budgets are. And we all hear those hated words, I don't have time. You find that hour to take care of this now, and it'll save you untold hours further down the road. You do have time. You have to find the time. You have to make it in order for the rest of it. Because you'll spend 10 times the amount of time later to deal with that thing you could have dealt with now if you would have done it in an organized and efficient manner, like having everybody in the room.
Yeah. Well, and we must say, just, when the project starts, schedule every meeting. And then guess what? The people do have time, because it's been on their calendar for months, 12 months, however long.
No
it's
excuses.
Just a known thing.
Yeah.
The workshop is every fourth week, or whatever the frequency is. It's always Wednesday and half a Thursday. I know that I'm going to need to be in the room at 9 a.m. I know that I'm going to have, an hour break in the middle where I can go make a phone call, check email, whatever I need to do. It's known. You do have time. You know what's on the agenda. And if you can't be there, like, you have to have leadership involved to say, if you can't be there, you need to send someone in your place who can hear what's happening and contribute.
And appropriately bring it back and communicate it to everybody else.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
so
the value of meeting minutes. I mean, we could talk about that too.
That's probably its own whole hour conversation.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you were shooting for LEED, and so LEED Gold. And what I understand is this is a LEED Gold certified project. What did you do to achieve that?
Ooh, a lot of things, and there was so much discussion about which measures to go for. And again, ripple effects from all the different disciplines, and should we reclaim water? Like, so many things to consider there. I mean, really, I think that kudos to Port Portland. LEED Gold is really not that far of a push beyond what their standards are. So I don't want to say it wasn't hard, but you're starting with a client that has standards that they're forward thinking. They're a lot of the way there. And what that means is that it really comes down to some of the things that you're choosing to do that are different from standard, talking to them about that and getting it move forward. Of course, materials and recycled content and sustainable wood products and recycling of construction. Yeah, using concrete, recycled concrete for aggregate, things like that. That just they're, especially I think in the Northwest, they're not pushing the envelope that far to do because we're used to doing that. And we have clients, when you're talking about an institution like Port Portland, like, well, yeah, isn't that what we do?
I struggle with that a little bit on the podcast because we are in the Pacific Northwest. And so we don't get as, I don't want to say excited, but we just sustainably design. It's just a thing, it's not unique. It's just the way pretty much everybody operates, clients and architects and everybody alike. At some level, you're thinking, how can I do this better in the Pacific Northwest? But then you interview an architect from somewhere else where they have not necessarily quite evolved to that place yet. Mm-hmm. And it's really, they're really excited to share some of the things. And you have to remember, you do have to be excited for them because they're not doing this every day like we are here.
Yeah.
And they are moving forward, but you have to remind yourself, because you might be thinking in your brain, well, that's not that big a deal because I live here. Right. But it actually is there. So yeah, I have to remind myself about that pretty regularly because it is, I've even sometimes thought about leaving out the sustainable design question when I have guests from the Pacific Northwest, because it's like, to me, that's not that exciting. But then I remember there's a lot of people that can learn from that and go, oh, wow, well, I never thought about trying that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and maybe nowadays carbon might be a more more of a question, right? That's kind of where thinking has kind of shifted a bit. But I think that the thing with LEED for airports was that the rating system really it seemed to not be designed with airports in mind, right? That a lot of the things about community connections and bike parking and showers and those things, they just weren't written in a way where airports could take advantage of it. And not even when it's like not even approachable, then it's really hard to push, right? LEED's supposed to be pushing to get more done. And so you have to create a scoring system that pushes people to want, like, oh yes, if I push that boundary and just go a little further, that yes, then I can get that point and I can do that. And oh, okay, now I'm up to platinum. Yes. Right. But if you aren't writing it in a way that whole project type can take advantage of, then you're missing out on some pushing of that edge. And so Port Portland teamed with ACI's Airports Council International, the North American chapter, to give feedback to USGBC on how the LEED system was or wasn't working for airports. And so fortunately for us, that conversation was happening as we were doing Concourse. So we were able to, the Port Portland leaned on us and said, all right, you're experiencing this. What should we say? What should our feedback be? And we addressed 7 different areas where we had recommendations for how the rating system might be able to evolve to address airports. And in the next version of LEED, they had made moves on 6 of 7. So
wow,
yes, right? Like,
nice.
oh, like, how
That's
often does
something
that
to be
happen?
proud of.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
that's not an easy needle to move.
no,
Wow.
and what a great collaboration to even be talking about those things. And yeah, really proud that it's not always that you get such direct motion and you can be like, yeah, all right, 6 out
I
of
hope
7.
I hope you got a little credit for that.
Right? Yeah, we should fine print. Well, you do projects like this and I think as architects we like to take credit for a lot of things, but really our it's our clients' approach, culture, mentality that sets us up for a lot of that success. And without the Port of Portland saying, yeah, we want to team up with ACINA to talk to USGBC, like none of that would have happened.
Well, Port of Portland's making all kinds of points with me today.
I'm probably talking too good about them.
No,
Calm it down.
Well, I think it's well, I mean, they're a public agency, and public agencies don't always get a lot of credit for a whole lot.
Yeah.
People are inherently built to complain rather than to celebrate. It's my tax dollars, or where are they going if they don't see what they want to see?
Sure.
I find it very encouraging to hear such a major organization here in our area is thinking forward like that and looking for ways to be better. And, I can get behind my tax dollars doing things like what I'm seeing here. And so I think it is important to celebrate that um, because generally all you ever hear is what's wrong, not what's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like to err on the lighter side of things rather than the darker side if I don't have to. Nothing's perfect, but let's talk about, before we get to the carpet. I've been waiting all this time to talk about the carpet. I love that carpet. But before we talk about the carpet, just give me just a general description of anything unique or special you did with your interior finishes in Concourse.
Unique or special? I think
Or just what you did in Concourse. I know it's an airport. They take a lot of heavy use.
they do. Well, it's not unique for Portland itself to have carpet, so it's really, but it's unique overall in airports. Somewhat unique to have carpet, especially a custom carpet like Portland has. And terrazzo is that's not unique either. I think one material that I hadn't seen used before, maybe it had, I wasn't aware of it being used before, but we used ultra high performance concrete panels on the interior. Tactile was the manufacturer for that, and those we used at that passenger touch zone height where you're circulating, where the rolling bags are moving and hitting everything. And I think that was a unique choice, and it did mean we had to build confidence with our client and the port with this material being used because it hadn't been used before. So there was a whole lot of just homework to be done and proving out the material as a material choice, proving out that the manufacturer had the capabilities. I mean, it was Tactile was relatively speaking a new company then, because certainly at this airport scale, really needing to build the confidence for that. So that was a lot of work, and I really enjoyed that process of like digging in, going deep, figuring it all out, making sure that it was going to work. That is, you just don't want to mess up that on an airport.
I'm curious, are they, because it reminds me of something that happened years ago on one of our projects, but were they happy with the choice?
Yeah.
Because we've all seen airport walls.
Oh, yeah.
And they are nothing but black streaks and dents and chips and from those people in their bags and
all of it. Yeah. The finish that we had, the mock-ups that we went through to get and samples, but the finish that we have is ultra high performance concrete. The aggregate is very fine, but it's finished in a way where you're seeing the aggregate on the surface of the panel. You would almost think it's like a slightly sandblasted quartz or something would be an appearance I might describe for it. But it's got the aggregate right there at the surface. So when a bag is brushing up against it and so forth, you're not scratching a pristine drywall painted surface or something like that. It's taken the bumps and scrapes pretty well. So.
And probably hiding them a bit from the aggregate. They don't immediately jump off the wall at you.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe I'll tell you my story sometime about walls. But I want to talk about the carpet. I would be remiss in my duties doing an airport interview for the Portland airport as an Oregonian myself if we don't talk about the Portland airport carpet. And I will tell you, if you were to look on my phone, I don't even know how many hundreds of pictures there are of my feet on the Portland airport carpet, because that's it. The Portland airport carpet insulted me once. They don't have it anymore, but the Portland airport carpet had a Twitter account, PDX Carpet. And when somebody would post a picture of their feet on the carpet, oh, I'm going to I'm going to Aruba, whatever. If you tagged the Portland airport in your tweet, they would reply with an insult. My last one was, oh, look at those hairy toes. I do not have hairy toes, by the way, but it just, the Portland airport carpet it has a complete life and entity of its own, which I have never understood, but we all buy into it around here. I understand that you did some stuff with our very special carpet. So I want to hear, I don't know if, I don't even know how Portland airport carpet became a thing. So if you do, I'd love to know, but tell me what you did with the carpet, our precious carpet.
Oh, the precious carpet. Yeah. Well, I'll go back to the carpet replacement project, I guess. So totally different project, not the Concourse project. And I think we began that project in 2011 or 2012, maybe. And the project was to replace the aging carpet in Portland Airport. And the aging carpet is the beloved original, well, what people call the original carpet, which, by the way, was not the original carpet, of course. But it was designed in the 80s, a very 80s motif. I have it behind me. It's the top one. And the carpet, had been down for so long that we joked it was a textile hard flooring. It was so worn, and they had issues with just keeping up with the maintaining it, and they had issues with watermarking, which is the voodoo of carpet fiber laying the wrong way. It's and I say voodoo because there's not an obvious fix. At the time we started the project, the port was like, oh, we don't know. Just throw in there. It's like, how do you solve watermarking? We don't know. And so you couldn't just remake the same carpet, because this was ahead of the carpet being a big deal on its own. There wasn't like, oh, we have to keep the same design. So Port Portland did an exercise actually before we were brought on, where they developed the motif, that the little motif that would be on the new carpet. They developed that pattern. It was actually slightly more complicated pattern than what the final ended up being. We had to remove some of the colors because you literally couldn't get a machine to put that many colors into carpet. But we couldn't do the same the same fabrication of carpet in a sustainable way. It would involve having carpet made in India and yarns being shipped across oceans back and forth, and just didn't make sense, especially, like we said, we're pretty sustainable here in the Northwest. So we developed the new carpet. We did mock-up where we had to put it down on the floor for like 3 months and some different options, let passengers walk over it. That's how there's a little bit of what might look like embossing in the design of the new carpet, and that came from that experience of that mock-up, that the one with that overlaying kind of embossing pattern wore better than the other. It was a heck of a thing, and when we began the original carpet, it was not a huge thing. There were people who would take pictures of their feet, but it wasn't off the wall. It didn't have its own Twitter or anything like that. In fact, when we were looking to recycle the content at the beginning of the project, it was like, silence. Like there was nobody calling us back on the other end of the, would you like to recycle this phone calls? Would you like to make some wool socks out of this wool carpet fiber that we're going to have? No, nothing. And through the course of the project, it took on the typical Portland thing. I think we have a community here that just loves to grab on to things like this and make something that maybe the rest of the country and the world might think is kind of quirky and strange into a really big, beloved deal. And that's what happened here. People really latched on to the old carpet, and when they found out it was going to be removed, that it just went ballistic and became like a huge thing. And you could buy beer with the carpet pattern on the label, or people got carpet tattoos, carpet socks, carpet scarves, carpet designs on the top of cupcakes, the whole thing.
I have the socks.
Yeah.
I think I got them in a gift bag. I will honestly, I didn't buy the socks. But, I was wondering, as I said, I don't really know the history of the carpet. And as you were talking, I was thinking, wait a minute, if I remember correctly, when you started talking about the original carpet replacement project, and it's like, wait a minute, I remember now, the city went ape when they heard this carpet was going to change. Like they were protecting the spotted owl. I mean, they went crazy. Like you can't take our carpet away. And I was wondering, as you were talking, was that when the Portland carpet became a thing?
Yeah.
Because it has remained a thing ever since.
Like
our mountain is out. That's our carpet. It's ridiculous. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's our airport carpet.
Yeah. And the Port of Portland, there were parts of the carpet, the old carpet, that were less worn, were removed more carefully. And the Port of Portland had an RFQ or RFP for people to propose, like, I want X number of yards of carpet. I'm planning to do this with it. And so a lot of the carpet went into the hands of various different organizations or people, various pursuits. And oh my gosh, I remember I go in the gorge a lot, and I remember walking through downtown Hood River and looking into one of the galleries of artists or something into that space, and there was the Portland airport carpet on the floor. What? That's my project. How did they get that? How is that here right now?
Oh, they were probably selling it on the black market, as crazy as people were about that carpet when it was being replaced. I have to admit, although I ended up jumping on the bandwagon, mentally I wasn't out protesting carpet anywhere. But at first I was like, what's the big deal? It's just carpet. But then I started thinking about it, and it really is, we're pretty territorial about the things that make Portland, Portland.
Yeah.
And that was one of, I'm going to die and my kids are going to say, I couldn't find very many pictures of Mom, but we have about 200 pictures of her feet on the Portland carpet. You know.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Working on the project, how many friends of mine sent me photos of their feet on the old carpet, the new carpet, just because I was working on the project. Like, Michelle needs a photo of my feet. But
I would
yeah,
be
I'm very
going,
proud of.
stop it.
Okay, we love it. Okay. Yeah, I'm proud of the pieces I have because they were gifts from the Port of Portland at the end of the project to members of the design team. They gave these finished on the outside pieces that are supposed to be doormats. I was like, there's no way I'm walking on this, man. It's going on the wall.
So, are there any spots left in the Portland airport with the original carpet? Isn't there? I want to say that
There
I saw it
are,
somewhere.
yeah, they so it became such a thing that when they did the new terminal core redevelopment, they engaged us to remake the original carpet design. And so it's not original in that it wasn't torn up from somewhere and
Right.
put there. It's newly made, but I don't think you could possibly get closer to the actual original than what we did there. It is so spot on, and it was a heck of a process to remake that to match the original. At one point, we had a sample that was like the blessed sample that, okay, this sample matches. It's the sample. It's the approved sample. And we were told by the project manager of the Port of Portland, just do not lose that sample. It's property of the Port of Portland. Okay.
CIA protection for that sample.
Yes, so we got a tracking device and we sewed it onto that carpet sample because we had to send that thing to Georgia so that the manufacturer could match it. And yeah, you bet we had this big, I'm not talking about an air tag, like a true tracking device. We could
Wow.
keep
I
tabs
love
on where
that
that sample was.
story. And I love that they brought some of it back. I know that
Yeah.
I think Oregonians are open-minded enough to understand that sometimes things wear out. I think it was more the attachment to all the memories of coming and going. Traveling's always a
Yeah.
big thing emotionally, that pattern more than the probably actual carpet itself.
Yeah.
Taking the carpet up was taking away that piece of all those lovely memories or even sad memories or whatever of when you went to get on an airplane to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear it's about, wow, tracking. I get to hear some interesting stuff on this podcast. Never heard of any tracking devices on a carpet sample before. We're all,
Well,
taking those home to our toddlers' daycare center so they have something to play with. That's
right.
that's pretty amazing. Highlight of my day.
Good. Thought I could bring it to you.
So I'm curious. We've talked a little bit about just kind of how this project has come down the pipe, but one of the things that I find in any kind of adaptive reuse or renovation or addition kind of project is you typically have more challenges or maybe different challenges than you do with new construction because you're not encountering unknown things in new construction. Tell me about at least one unexpected challenge or any kind of challenge that you had to navigate during construction.
So this project opened in July of 2020. And I think for those of us who know when the pandemic started, this that was a challenging time. And we've all heard the stories of getting things done and during the pandemic and working virtually and all that. But I think the challenge really that was hardest to deal with at that time was to design a project for so many people to be in that space. You're designing really, you know, it's volumetric space where a lot of people are going to be moving and the concession nodes are going to be full. And there's going to be, all these different restaurants and shops, and then people in the hold rooms waiting to get on their flights. And you're designing it for that, people flying places. And then, you deal with all the actual challenges of the pandemic. And when it opens, there's really nobody there hardly. It's so empty. And the concessionaires couldn't open. They just didn't, like, it wasn't going to pencil to open a concession. Some of them did, but it was very minimal, not the full thing that was planned. And it was really difficult to not have that moment when you cut the ribbon and you ate the cake and, it's open. Okay, everybody come through. It was really a story of like delayed gratification, right? And being able to go back now and see it being used, and see people going to the end to sit and look at Mount Hood. I mean, gosh, like it was hard to let go of that at the time when we opened, but now it's okay.
Well, I can only imagine that's a lot of work and a lot of, just heart and soul goes into every project any team does. But when you have something like this, that's such a notable project on top of it. I mean, in Portland, eyes are watching you. They're like, you're messing with our airport. You better not disappoint. That's a lot of pressure. And to finally get across that finish line, and that had to feel a little apocalyptic, to walk. I can't even imagine walking through an airport where nothing's happening. We have such a busy, active. I saw some stat recently, and I don't remember the number now, but my mind was blown. I mean, I knew we had a busy airport. I didn't know it was that busy at the numbers of, daily, weekly, monthly numbers of people that move through our airport.
Yeah.
Because it never feels like millions and millions of people.
Right.
Yeah. But that's largely due to the design as well.
Yeah, it is. And it's the design of the airport that attracts the people, the making it function well combined with the design is what attracts the airlines to want to fly more flights through your airport as well. I mean, in addition, of course, to the fees and charges and so on. But, it all ties together. Design, operations, efficiency, rates, the whole thing.
Well, and it matters. I do a fair amount of traveling, and there are certain airports I just cringe as I'm getting off the plane. I know there's nowhere comfortable to go. I know you can't even walk down the concourses because so many people are spilling out from the gate areas because there's not enough space for them getting ready to board their planes, or it's old and run down, insanely crowded. You don't feel like you can move. It's almost a little claustrophobic sometimes. And you don't get that in Portland. You get I'm hanging out in the coolest airport club in the country with all the space in the world to do whatever it is I need to do. And there's something to be said for that planning and that design to make it the place that it is. And I don't think that can be underscored enough, because I will look at if I have to take a flight with a layover, I will look at, okay, where do I have to lay over? Because I'm going to find one that I can stand being in that airport for 4 hours or whatever it is that I have to be stuck there.
Yeah. Layover or dealing with international arrivals. Like, that's when I get picky.
Yeah, exactly.
So I won't name the least favorites list. I think we all have our own. But,
yep, I'm not calling anybody out. But all I say is every single time I go somewhere, I'll go to a new city and I'll think, would I live here? And I have not yet been to a city where I said yes.
Yeah.
I would come back and visit here a whole bunch of times. There have been a lot of incredible places, but it never fails. every single time I come home from a trip and get off that plane in Portland, that overwhelming feeling of home and this is where I belong. And that welcome getting off the plane in that airport is a part of that. I mean, this is my airport and this is my carpet and this is my view of Mount Hood and that's my mountain, which is what every single Oregonian says. There's something to be said for that, but that welcome home is always pretty notable, especially even more so now with all the incredible things that have been done there. Before we get to our 2 closing questions, tell me so now we're friends. You're stuck with me. What is Hennebery Eddy working on that I can look forward to hearing about in the future?
Oh, well, on the aviation front, we're working at quite a few airports on the mostly West Coast right now. We have projects at Seattle, Bozeman, San Diego, Yakima. Teamed with another architect on that, and also Redmond Airport terminal expansion.
Redmond has an airport.
Redmond has it's where anyone who's going to Bend, Sun River, Bachelor, Black Butte, whatever. That's the airport there. So they're going from being all ground load to getting contact gates. So
wow,
soon to come. Look out. I don't know if they've put a date out there, but late 2027 or early 2028, I think would be when you could start.
Yeah, these airport projects don't happen quickly. That's one thing. Plan on working for a while.
Yeah, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we don't just do aviation work, right? So we've got big public works campus project for City of Bend. We've got academic work. We've got a new school of computing for Montana State University. That topped out the steel earlier this spring, and so I think we're about a year away from opening there. Portland Art Museum, that the expansion there is going to be finishing before the end of this year. There's a lot of exciting things that the public will be able to see and experience.
So another rabbit hole for a second. Your firm has grown quite a bit in recent years. Am I correct in that statement?
Yeah.
Because I came to your firm actually and did a presentation on specifications, and that would have been before COVID, but not.
Okay.
I mean, it was before COVID, probably sometime a year or 2 before COVID. It's been a while, but I came and did a presentation, and I looked at your website today, and I was just scrolling through your people, and I'm like, wait a minute, there were not that many people when I was there. And that wasn't 100 years ago. It's like, and I'm scrolling and I'm like, where the heck did all these people come from? So you guys have really expanded the practice.
We have, yeah. We have a Bozeman, Montana office now, about a dozen people there, and a Bend office as well. I think we're 8 or 10 folks currently. In fact, we just moved into a new space there and more than doubled the size of our elbow room for everybody. Yeah, try to think 2018, 2019 probably had 60, 70 some people maybe, and now we're a little over 100.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah. And yeah, we're knock on wood, things are going well right now. We have a couple of new folks joining us over the next few weeks, so still making it happen, moving forward. And I think for us, the most important thing is to pick up really good people when you find them. Bring them on
I've
board,
always
make them part
had
of your team.
My firm included. I've always had a lot of respect for the firms that really put a large amount of effort into who they hire. Looking at the bigger picture. What is our company culture? What are we passionate about? goals for the company. And I find that when firms really put that effort in right up front to really try to, again, it doesn't matter if you're the smartest person in the room if you can't gel with the people you have to work with. And and I worked for a previous firm that I actually had to take, he always used to get mad at me for calling them personality tests because that's not really what they were, but I had to take these 3 different tests to evaluate my scores against all the other people in the office to see where I landed. It wasn't a pass-fail thing, but do your numbers, gel with the kind of people around here and their numbers and people that work well together. And some people had strengths in one area and other people's had them in others, and they were looking for this cohesive fit. And I really appreciated at that firm as well the effort they put into really putting together the best teams that they could.
And I think what, we've also done, some of the what are your strengths sort of evaluations. And, at one point, I think we had 2/3 of the firm had done that. And that helped a lot with understanding of each other on a team and what makes someone tick and how to motivate.
See, this sounds like strength finders.
Strength finder.
That's the one we had a couple other ones, but that was one of ours. But it helps you understand a person better. And when you understand a person better, like I have to in my role, I work with everybody in the company. And so how I might work with you on a project in your specification is going to be 100% different than the person at the desk next to you, because you're a different human than they are. And maybe you're type A like I am, and I can just come at you like this and you're fine. But that introvert sitting next to you cannot handle me. If I come in with guns blazing, So, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So we close with a broad industry question and then the final question that everybody gets. So the broad industry question, you teamed up with Fentress Architects for this project. Teaming with another firm can be difficult. I've been on projects where we've had to do that. And even with all the best intentions, you have 2 different kind of eco environments in 2 different firms in the way that they practice and the way they communicate, whatever it is they need to do. And so it is really a testament to a firm when you can bring 2 together and do something successfully. What advice would you give somebody else planning to team up with another firm on a project to help set them up for success?
Advice, this aviation is, like we mentioned, the projects are so long. This was a 6-year project. We started in 2014, finished in 2020. And I mentioned the 28 or 29 workshops that we had. So every time there was a workshop, the Fentress team would be coming to Portland for multiple days. They would come ahead of the workshop. We would collaborate on, finalizing the presentation, editing slides, take this one out, put that one in, all of that. And then we would do the workshop together and, be several days together. And I realized that they are leaving their families to come to Portland to do this with us. And the least I could do is spend time with them, my personal time with them as they do that. And that that's not just an acknowledgement of what they're giving to be here, but also going to benefit the relationship that we will have as we move through 6 years of a project together. And not just for me, for the rest of our team, it was like, okay, we really need to be here with them as they do that, spend time with them, dedicate ourselves to doing this with them. And I think at any level, any duration of project, if you can see what the other team is giving and step up to the plate, be right there with them, and that you're going to build a strong relationship, and a strong relationship is what it takes so that you can, you know, have the phone call on a Saturday afternoon, when the design architect is working on some sketches and is like, hey, Michelle, what do you think about this? Okay, I'm going to stop pulling weeds now, and I'm going to sit down here and I'm going to talk to you about some of these design ideas. I don't care if it's a Saturday afternoon and I was doing something else. You're working right now on this project for our airport? You bet. I'm going to take the time. And it made things like that happen. And it also made it that if there was any kind of team challenge of any sort or construction challenge, that you have a relationship, you can pick up the phone and just say, all right, here's what's happening. We gotta figure this out. Let's figure it out. So that would be number one. Number two is that as project manager for the project, as we were working on the hours and responsibilities and what's the fee going to be and all that, I was laying out a spreadsheet that had the Hennebery Eddy team members and the Fentress team members all on one spreadsheet. And that way it's one person thinking about how all this works together, and then sit down with Tom Theobald from Fentress and go, okay, this is what I'm thinking. This is how it comes together. Have a whole conversation, maybe make some adjustments, but it's one team of people getting this work done. That I think that made a big difference and built a lot of confidence with the Port of Portland as well, that we were not overlapping work. We knew what we were doing, and we knew how the roles and responsibilities were divided. And those roles and responsibilities were figured out before we turned the proposal in. I mean, we knew who was going to be doing what.
So at the end of the day, with everything, really, it's all about the people. You lose your focus there, and whatever it is you're trying to do is going to fall apart.
Yeah.
No matter how good you are. I love that. That's great advice. So the easiest question of the day.
Okay.
You ready?
Easier than carpet?
No, this is no, my guests usually give me a dirty look once I say the question, like, what? That's not easy. We all hope, I hope that we all hope to live a life that leaves some kind of contribution to make the world a better place. Probably have lots of goals. Personal or professional, what do you hope your impact will be?
I mean, I think personal and professional kind of melds a bit in that area. There is, we have our vision statement at Hennebery Eddy about, that we're designing to inspire, embrace, and renew, and I feel deeply committed to all of that. But I think the piece that, for me personally, I hope to leave behind is a true impact of our mantra, make others successful. And that, for me, if I can leave that really embedded and just going through the minds of not just the people who will continue on at Hennebery Eddy, but all the people that we interact with, I think that's a lasting mantra that really can change the outcome of relationships and the outcome of all sorts of things on projects. But if you're constantly thinking, how can I make the other person successful? You will become successful yourself, and you will avoid that banging heads part, all the difficulties, all that. Really, just whenever you encounter something where you're not quite sure how to approach the situation with another person, if you just say, okay, how can I make them successful in this? It's amazing the ideas that come forward, and that will move you right through that thing with building trust, solidifying the relationship. And I think that works in the professional zone as well as the personal zone.
Well, when you learn to look outward and not always looking inward, those interactions, you'll never know the impact. You'll never know one little thing that you thought was no big deal, how big that was. We've all had moments. I've had moments in my life that somebody did some small thing that they at the time thought was no big deal that changed the course of my life.
Yeah.
And you don't know when you're going to do that. You're never going to hear about it likely, or you might once or twice in your life get a little shiny moment that you're going, wow, I didn't realize that. But just knowing, I call them ripples, that you're leaving these little ripples that you don't know how big they get as they move away from you.
Yeah.
I don't need to know that they happened. I just need to know that I tried. And I feel like that's a valid effort.
Yeah,
just
I like
by
that ripples. The ripples.
Positive
ripples, because there are, so,
Well, they do. They get bigger. And when you make a difference for somebody, even when you don't know you did, it could be something simple as some little comment or piece of advice you gave in passing conversation you didn't think twice about, but how it landed with them was different. But then they have this moment and they turn around and ripple somebody else. and then all of a sudden they're not ripples anymore. They're waves. And, so I feel like I had the opportunity to have an interview with a kindred spirit today. Michelle, thank you.
Absolutely, Cherise.
So much for joining me. You are welcome back anytime. And you don't need an invite. You can just say, "Hey, Cherise, I got this cool project." You don't get to talk about carpet, but
okay.
But thank you. I so appreciate you taking the time with me today.
Well, I really enjoyed the conversation. It was like I was sitting, just like you said, having happy hour or something.
Yep. No, we're buddies now.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you, Cherise.